Hello friends, we are from the sixth group. We will present about uh, teaching grammar material and the member of group. Uh, the first is I am Pepe pangestu. The second Putu Ari Krisnanda, and the last is Pande Dharma Sugiharta. So please pay attention in our presentation, okay? Definition: teaching is the process of attending to people's needs, experiences, and feelings, and intervening so that they learn particular things and go beyond the given. Grammar is the system of a language. People sometimes describe grammar as the rules of a language, but in fact, no language has rules. If we use the word rules, we suggest that somebody create the rules first and then spoke the language, like a new game. But languages did not start like that. Languages started by people making sounds, which evolved into words, phrases, and sentences. No commonly spoken language is fixed. All languages change over time. What we call grammar is simply a reflection of a language at a particular time. Teaching grammar is the process of attending to people's needs, experiences, and feelings, and intervening so that they learn the mental system of rules and categories that allows humans to form and interpret the words and sentences of their language. Material number 2. Why should we teach grammar? There are many arguments for putting grammar in the foreground in second language teaching. Here are 7 of them. The sentence machine argument. Part of the process of language learning must be what is sometimes called item learning, that is the memorization of individual items, such as words and phrases. However, there is a limit to the number of items a person can both retain and retrieve. Even travelers' praise books have limited usefulness, good for a 3-week holiday. But there comes a point where we need to learn some patterns or rules to enable us to generate new sentences, that is to say, grammar. Number 2, the fine tuning argument. The purpose of grammar seems to be to allow for greater subtlety of meaning than a merely lexical system can cater for. While it is possible to get a lot of communicative mileage out of simply stringing words and phrases together, there comes a point where me, Tarzan, you, Jane, type language gels to deliver both in terms of intelligibility and in terms of appropriacy. This is particularly the case for written language, which generally needs to be more explicit than spoken language. Number 3. The fossilization argument. It is possible for highly motivated learners with a particular aptitude for language to achieve amazing level of proficiency without any formal study, but more often pick it up as you go along. Learners reach a language plateau beyond which it is very difficult to progress. To put it technically, their linguistic competence fossilizes.
The advanced organizational argument grammar instruction might also have a delayed effect. The researcher Richard Smith kept a diary of his experience learning Portuguese in Brazil. Initially, he had enrolled in formal language classes where there was a heavy emphasis on grammar. When he subsequently left this class to travel in Brazil, his Portuguese made good progress, a fact he attributed to the use he was making of it. However, as he interacted naturally with Brazilians, he was aware that certain features of the talk, certain grammatical items seemed to cut his attention. 5. The discrete item argument linked with seem from outset can seem to be a gigantic, shapeless mass presenting an insuperable challenge for the learner. Because grammar consists of an apparently set of rules, it can help to reduce the apparent enormity of the language learning tasks for both teacher and student. 6. The rule of law argument, it follows from the discrete item argument that since grammar is a system of learnable rules, it lends itself to a view of teaching and learning known as transmission. A transmission view sees the role of education as the transfer of a body of knowledge from those that have the knowledge to those that do not. Such a view is typically associated with the kind of institutionally set learning where rules, order, and discipline are highly valued. 7. The learner expectation argument, regardless of the theoretical and ideological argument for or against grammar teaching. Many learners come to language classes with fairly fixed expectation as to what they will do there. Next, presenting grammar. Number 1, the deductive approach, rule-driven learning. Deductive approach start with the presentation of a rule and is followed by example in which the rule is applied. The grammar rule is presented and the learner language with it through the study and manipulation of example. Expanded of a deductive approach, it gets straight to the point and can therefore be time saving. Many rules, especially rule of form, can be more simply and quickly explained than exactly from example. This is will allow more time for practice and application. It respects the intelligence and maturity of many, especially adult students, and knowledge the role of cognitive process in language acquisition. It confirms many student expectations about classroom learning, particularly of those learners who have an analytical learning style. It allows the teacher to deal with language points as they come up rather than having to anticipate them and prepare for them in advance. Disadvantage of a deductive approach, starting the lesson with a grammar presentation may be off-putting for some students, especially younger ones. They may not have sufficient language used to talk about language such as grammar terminology, or they may not be able to understand the concept involved. Grammar explanation encourages a teacher from transmission style. Classroom teacher explanation is often at the expense of student involvement and interaction. Explanation is seldom as memorable as other forms of presentation such as demonstration, such as an approach the belief that learning a language is simply a case of knowing the rules. Number two, in the deductive approach, the rule discovery paths. What are the advantages of encouraging learning to work rules out for themselves? Rules learners discover for themselves are more likely to fit their exciting mental structure than rules they have been presented by. This in turn will make the rules more meaningful, memorable, and serviceable. The mental effort involved ensure a greater degree of cognitive depth which again ensure greater memorability. Students are more actively involved in the learning process rather than being simply passive recipients. They are therefore likely to be more attentive and more motivated. It is an approach with various pattern recognition and problem solving abilities which suggests that is particularly suitable for learners who like this kind of challenge. If the problem solving is done collaboratively and in the target language, learners get the opportunity for extra language practice. Working things out for themselves prepare students for greater self-release and is therefore conducive to learner autonomy.
Work out by rules might be at the expense of time spent in putting the rules to some sort of productive practice. And the last, student might practice that wrong rules or their version of the rules might be either too broad or too narrow in this application. This is especially a danger where is no offer testing of their effectiveness, either through practice, the example, or by exploiting and explicit statement teaching grammar in situational content using generative situation. The generative situation is a situation which the teacher set up in the lesson in order to generate it. Several example sentence of structure. It finds a situational content from its presentation of a wide range of language items. The situation serves as means of context the language and this help then therefore its meaning. At the same time, the generated example provide the learners with data for introduction of rules of form. Students can be involved in the development of the presentation as well in solving the grammar problem. This makes it less dry in traditional grammar explanation. Instead, if students are in the wrong mindset, they are unlikely to do kind of cognitive work involved in the induction of grammar rules. The kind of presentation of takes more time than explanation. Time spent on presenting language is invaluable time spent at the expense of language practice, and it's a goal that what most students need is not the presentation of rules but opportunities to practice them. 2. Teaching grammar through text. Advice of using text. The part of provide intellectual information, allowing learning to deduce the meaning of unfamiliar grammatical item from the context. And the second, if the texts are authentic, they can show how the item is usable in real communication. And the third, as well as grammar involved text provide vocabulary involved skill, practice, and exposure to feature of text. And the third is here used in this Yeah, their use in the it, it, the third is their use in the classroom is good preparation for independent study. And the five, if the texts come from the situation themselves, they might be more engaging and their language features their form or memorable this fantastic example. And the last difficulty of the text, especially an authentic on my means that some of the above unfaded are lost. And seven, the alternative to use simplified text might give a misleading impression as to how the language item in natural use. Again, defending the purpose of using text. And the not all text will be of actual interest to students. 9. Students who want the quick answer to simple questions might consider the use of text to be the scenic route to language awareness and would prefer a quicker, more direct route instead. 3. Teaching grammar through stories. Everyone loves a story. Stories can be used for both exciting and illustrating grammar point. The former employs deductive reasoning, while later requires deductive thought, and it is usable to include both approaches in lesson planning. Teaching grammar through song and rhymes. Some also give new insight to the target author. They are main through with color themes are presented effectively. Scan they are provide authentic text. They are motivated. Rules for teaching grammar. What conclusion are to be drawn about teaching of grammar? Here are some rules of thumb. The first, rules of content. Teaching grammar in content. If you want have to take an item out of content in order to draw attention to it. Ensure that it's reconditional as soon as possible. The rules of use teach grammar in order to facilitate the learner's comparison and production of real language rather than as an end in itself. And then the rules of economy. To fulfill the rule of use be economic. This means economizing on presentation time in order to provide maximum practice time. With grammar a little can go a long way. And then the rules of relevance. Teach only the grammar that students have problem with. This means start off by fitting out what they already count. Next, the rules of nature. Teaching doesn't necessarily cause learning, not in any direct way instruct learning. The law 3 to provide the right condition for grammar learning. The rules of appropriacy. Interpret all the above rules according to the level, needs, interests, expectation, and learning styles of the student.